This Week in Startups is brought to you by Segment. Segment's startup program has exclusive deals with the best tools and resources to become a data expert. To see if you qualify for a free account worth up to $25,000, go to segment.com/twist. LinkedIn. LinkedIn has marketing tools to help you target your customers with precision. To redeem a $100 LinkedIn ad credit and launch your first campaign, go to linkedin.com/thisweekinstartups. And Capterra, the leading free online resource to find your best software solutions. Visit capterra.com/twist for free to find the right tools to make 2019 the year for your business.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of This Week in Startups. We're not in our studio because we're at Founder.University, which is a course we teach here in San Francisco about 6 times a year. This is our 10th one, and a good friend of mine, Joel Spolsky, was in town, and I said, hey, you're in town. Let's tape a podcast because things are going so well for you now, and he agreed.
Okay.
And you've agreed, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes. And we'll take some questions from the audience as well. But Joel, it's good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you too.
Congratulations on Trello. I haven't seen you since then.
Really? Okay.
It was like, what, 2 years ago you sold it?
It was, February, I think. So 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to have a little investment in there. Thank you for returning 8% of my fund.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I thought you were going to say 8X because it was 8X.
Yeah, it was 8X. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was yum. And it was about 8% of my fund. Yeah. We can do the math to get back there. Why did you sell Trello? It seemed like that was like up and to the right and just gangbusters.
It definitely was up and to the right.
$600 million. You sold it to
$475 million.
$475. Who did you sell it to?
Yeah, Atlassian.
Atlassian.
Yeah.
Which made HipChat, which was the precursor to Slack, and Jira.
Kind of. Yeah, they made Jira, which competed. Well, I don't know what order to tell the story in.
Yeah. You choose.
I think they wanted to buy it because they had gone public they made developer tools. You probably all know Atlassian is the company that makes Jira, which is really locked into the developer market. And is, in my humble opinion, a clone of Fogbugs, which is my first product. Actually, it's not just my opinion; that is fact. But they did a better job, and they were winning that particular market. And they went public because they were doing such a good job with Jira and their family of developer products. And a big part of the story going public was, well, today these are developer products, but one day everybody who does, who needs the same kind of productivity as developer has, will surely adopt the bug tracking products to keep track of their wedding seating arrangements, and so forth, and so on and so forth. And I'm paraphrasing now what was in the S1, but that was generally the pitch.
What do you think of that pitch? Did that become reality?
It often becomes reality, but not with the same product. So obviously Slack is a super successful version of a developer product called IRC, and HipChat along the way, and a bunch of other people that tried to do it. Email was a developer product at the beginning. Dropbox is an amazingly successful version of a developer product called Version Control Systems.
Yeah.
It's much easier to use, and it's designed for the mainstream audience. And Atlassian didn't really have that. And in order to, I think, live up to that promise of having a general productivity product, and now I'm essentially just putting myself in their shoes, I think they really needed something like Trello that was used by what I call civilians. And our goal with Trello was to build a product that 100 million people could use. And at the time of the acquisition, we were well on our way to achieving that. And
it was free, Trello, and maybe it still is. I know
Yep.
my wife was using it for tons of projects she was working on, and I was like, are you doing a Kanban?
Yeah.
What are you shipping? And
the Kanban is sort of the developer precursor to what
Right.
Trello became. But interestingly enough, the main point of the Kanban board is that the tasks move from left to right.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the first thing we threw away when we designed Trello.
Yeah.
It was like, why do they move any way you want? I don't care.
Right.
Don't even move them. Who cares? And that actually made it so much simpler for people to understand and use.
And you had, how close did you get to 100 million users? You were halfway there or something?
Yeah, well, the growth rates were fantastic. And I think the last time I was allowed to look at the numbers, it was 10 million.
Wow.
But I have heard since, it's been a couple of years, and the growth has continued apace inside Atlassian, and they're very happy, I believe, with that. Now, the question you started with is, why'd you sell? And I think the answer is something that I learned from Ed Williams of, what was it, Blogger, Medium, Twitter.
Odeo.
Odeo,
Obvious
the podcast
Ventures.
thing. I completely forgot about the.
I mean, think about that for a second.
Yeah,
Ed
and
Williams,
it's a cookie with white and black and.
Yeah. He had Audio, a
Yeah.
podcasting company in year one of podcasting.
Right.
And he was only 10 years too early.
What's the company now?
Well, Audio was deprecated
Yeah.
and Twitter was
Right.
accelerated.
And he volunteered. Oh, that's right. It was the same company, and he returned some of the money to investors. And
It was Obvious Ventures or Obvious Studios or something.
yeah.
And he had that as like one of
Okay,
the
we don't care about F, but he did write a blog post saying when you should sell your company. And he said, if somebody's offering you twice as much money than you think it's ever going to be worth, go ahead and take it.
Right.
And at the time, we were like, this is about twice as much as we feel like
It's going to be worth.
Yeah, so you may not get that kind of offer again.
Right.
As a standalone. I think, obviously, as a part of Atlassian, it's worth a lot more because they have a whole suite of products to sell enterprises. Similarly, maybe it would have been successful. Maybe something would have wiped it out. It's hard. It's really hard to know. And then you have an offer on the table, where you've been kind of going around thinking, this is probably worth $100 million, maybe $150 million. We got another offer that was a serious offer that probably would have gotten to maybe 175, and then Atlassian came and we said it's got to start with a 5. We said because we were brats. And then to
star the 5.
Yeah, and then just to dig it into us, they made a number that didn't start with a 5.
464.
Yeah, whatever it was, right?
Yeah, they showed you. But it is
did.
actually kind of the definition of a great acquisition when the founders feel like, and the early employees feel like, wow, we got a price that is beyond what we could ever dream. And the person acquiring it feels like, oh my God, we got a killer deal. This is going to pay off in years 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, I think, and I think they were very, one of the things that Atlassian really mints a lot of cash. And so they took all the money in their bank account and spent it on Trello. It was an all cash deal. And, like 2 months later, the money came back because their business is so good.
Wildly profitable.
Yeah.
And you created Trello when? What year was that? Do you remember?
Trello, let's see. I think 2011 was when we
Amazing.
first
So that was like a
created
6-year
it.
run, 7-year run?
It might have been the year 5 that we sold it. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. And at the same time, you had, or before that, maybe 10 years ago, you created a little company called Stack Overflow.
Right. So Stack Overflow we created in 2008.
Yeah, I remember.
And raised money in 2010. And it is still independent.
You started it during the financial crisis when the stock market got cut in half. That was 2007, 2008. It was a pretty dark period of time.
Yeah.
Especially in New York.
Yeah.
And Fred Wilson backed Stack Overflow too, or no?
Fred Wilson was the original investor. Actually, Brad Burnham from Union Square Ventures.
Brad's fantastic. Talk about him for a moment.
Oh, he's great.
Okay. This has been This Week in Startups. Brad, you're great. Book noted. Bookmarked.
They are definitely the... You know what? The reason I like Union Square Ventures, and I had actually literally written a blog post that was entitled, why I will never take venture capital or something of this sort. And there are just so many things wrong with everything about the normal venture capital process. But it's kind of the one that we have, and it only applies to a narrow range of companies, which ironically Stack Overflow really was. And it just sort of coincidentally, we were in the exact sweet spot of what a venture capitalist should fund. But Union Square Ventures was very special because I think they pretty much originated the idea of thesis-based investing. And instead of saying, well, we will look at companies that show up on our doorstep and decide, if we feel like investing in that company, which I think is the average investor's mentality, they instead said, let's figure out how we think the world is going to change over the next 10 years and what companies are going to be very successful as a result of those changes. And then let's go seek out the companies that best match that particular thesis. And their thesis at the time was just, and this is the entire thing, large networks of highly engaged users. And
large networks of highly engaged users. Twitter with journalists.
They pick Twitter,
Tumblr
they
with
pick
fashion.
Tumblr
with fashion.
Foursquare
with local businesses. Meetup with groups.
That was not super successful, but they did exit to WeWork. Stack Overflow was in that category, and a bunch of other companies you haven't heard of.
Every time I talk to a product manager at one of my investments, I ask them, how are people using the product? What's the most popular feature? How is it growing? Why are people churning? And a lot of founders and a lot of product managers don't know this basic information. Here's an easy way for you to understand how people are using your product down to the feature level, super granular. That lets you know, are you working on the right things? What if you're spending 100 developer hours this month on a feature that nobody uses? And then you don't know which feature is blowing up in your system that everybody's using because you are not using Segment. Segment helps you answer these questions definitively. Go to segment.com/twist and you will get a free Segment account worth up to $25,000. I'm not even kidding. Segment wants to capture the startup space, and they are giving listeners to This Week in Startups exclusively $25,000 in product. Go to segment.com/twist. You can cut down on all this annoying integration by just putting a couple of lines of code in and bing, bang, boom. All of your data is in one place, and it makes it easy for you to understand all the user journeys. So, this is complete. When you order their Segment, when you get the startup program, starting your conversations with what you think or what your intuition tells you or what you feel, and having this back and forth for 45 wasted minutes. Start with the data. What are the users actually doing? Segment allows you to do that. Everybody is using Segment. Go ask 10 of your friends from successful startups. 10 out of 10 will be using Segment. Segment.com/twist. Get the 25 large. This is 25 large. Go see if you qualify. I want you to go to segment.com/twist and apply to get a Segment account with $25,000. I don't know how long Segment's going to do this for, but it's a great deal. Segment.com/twist. Thanks again to the team at Segment for making a great product that so many of my portfolio companies use. And thank you for supporting our mission here at This Week in Startups to educate and inform and inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. Okay, speaking of which, let's get back to this amazing episode. Why were you anti-VC originally? Was that just like your New York chip on the shoulder, or are you negging them the same way Atlassian negged you?
No,
you wanted
no.
venture capital, so you're like, let me post, I don't want venture capital? Because that's
no.
a power move.
No, that is sort of but I wasn't smart enough to do that. There's a lot of situations where the VC's interests are not aligning with the founder's interests, and you try to align them, obviously, but the bottom line is they don't always end up aligning. And the hardest part of it, I think, actually, first of all, the VC wants a rate of growth which is not the natural rate of growth of a successful company, and that usually has to do with just how long their fund lasts, and what they're looking for is, I think, exceeding the speed limit by about 10 miles an hour.
Okay,
so,
that makes sense.
And you look at it, they sort of want the 6-year exit, right? And then everything works out well. And the natural rate is you get 10, 11-year exits. And then stuff doesn't quite fit with what they want, and they start to get bored with you. But the hardest one is that a VC achieves diversification. You all know the diversification strategy of your portfolio. Don't just own one thing, own multiple things, and then if the one thing burns down in a fire, you have other things. Yeah. And for a VC, the things that they own are companies. But for you as a founder, you're kind of highly focused on that one company. Right. And so, among other things, a VC will want all of their companies to take more risks, to operate more quickly, because they would rather see $3 billion exits and 7 abject failures than 10 okay companies,
$100 million
companies that made all their founders, wealthy and successful.
Now,
and so it's hard to sort of overcome that.
And is that a bad thing or a good thing, or is it just a thing?
Well, one of the things that changed since I originally wrote that article, and this is a big change in the world, is now actually the VCs are chasing the entrepreneurs and not vice versa.
Right.
So what that means is that the power dynamic has changed. I'm still control the board of Stack Overflow, even through 4 raises of funding, and that's very common. And in fact, a lot of companies you hear now through shenanigans with voting shares, they've gone public, and the founder is still controlling.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's as a public company. That's dumb. That's just dumb.
Why is it dumb?
I guess it never used to work that way, and it's not. The public markets are smart, and you should listen to them and not just.
But I mean, the counter would be Facebook and Google have these super votings, and these are the most successful companies of our generation.
Yeah, but it's the opposite. It's the causality. You got the causality backwards.
Okay.
It's not because they have super voting. I think actually they would probably.
They were so successful, they were given super voting later in life.
One of the benefits of being a public company is that you expose yourself to a little bit of scrutiny, and it's uncomfortable, but then you'll do better. That's just that's sort of a philosophy, I guess. Yeah. But forgetting that, the power dynamic has flipped, and so at the time. We were really like in 2000, 2001 when I wrote that original article. And first of all, there was no such thing as controlling your company. There's no such thing as a founder staying on as CEO. They could stay on for a while, but the VC brought in an assumption that they would bring in their own people to run the company. There was no such thing as the founders even retaining control of the board. Obviously.
Yeah, and sometimes founders were not on the board.
Yeah.
They would be ousted from their own boards.
From their own boards and thrown out. And yeah, there were a bunch of public examples of that. Ars
Yeah.
Digita was sort of a famous one, Phil Greenspan. And it wasn't the greatest company, but the ousting of the founders there was sort of reverberated among developers.
It is interesting how quickly the tides can change. I mean, we are talking about a 2-decade period, but that is not a long arc. And in that arc, we've gone from the founders being annoying and something you have to deal with to being, queens and god kings of the universe to not be questioned ever. Right.
Possibly too much. Like one of the reasons I'm stepping down as CEO of Stack Overflow is that I'm not the right person to be CEO of Stack Overflow. Certainly the next phase for Stack Overflow is it's directional to an IPO, and somebody has to do we're at about 70 million in bookings right now, and somebody's got to do 70 to 700, which is inevitable at this point,
right?
And then take it public. And boy, is that not me?
Yeah.
And in fact, there's sort of a long history of. I probably shouldn't say this in the podcast, but there were things that the board pushed me to do and did not have the power to push me to do that we should have done.
Right. You could have gone faster. You could have made acquisitions. You could have taken more money from somebody.
Right. It wasn't just that. There were more specific things that I sort of said, well, thank God I control the board because I will never do that.
Oh, they wanted you to fire people on your team?
Yeah. For example, that is actually kind of a common one. Like, is they sort of say, hey, I look around on your team and nobody has experience with this high growth stuff. And I was like, I don't care. I love them. They're great.
So you want to take the bad news bears to the World Series. Basically. And
go.
they're just like, you need to get some serious
You need
hitters
to go.
here.
You need to get
who was right, who was wrong.
Psychopath Silicon Valley executives who are just in it for themselves and their stock options.
I'm right here, Joel. Is this a job offer?
It is.
Is this what we're meeting about? Am I the new CEO?
Any day. There's only one thing. Yeah, you haven't run any Q&A companies in the past, have you?
Exactly. Yeah, I did. I had a project for a little bit. Let's go to the Q&A space. This is something really fascinating to me because we did, as part of Mahalo, a little answers product because we were sort of inspired by Yahoo Answers,
right.
which you and I both sort of studied and were like, wow, this Yahoo Answers thing is a juggernaut with the worst content in the world, so much so that there are memes based on it. Where does Baggy come from, et cetera.
Yeah.
But you and I both saw that, and so did Quora, I think, around the similar time, and some other companies. You decided with your lens to try 3 or 4 different things. I remember at least 3 different pivots that you did.
Yeah.
Take us through the triangulation to find what became the juggernaut that is Stack Overflow today. What were the missteps, the pivots?
Were the missteps? That's interesting.
Yeah, and the triangulation, as we like to call it.
So we also looked at Yahoo Answers and we thought, this is hilarious. That's not a thing. Why is everybody getting this so wrong? I still look at Quora, which serves its purpose, but they don't get answers to questions. Like if you put a question on there, it does not get answered by anybody.
You will get marketing.
Yeah. And you will see millions of Quora answers. I mean, there are people writing things in Quora, which to me often look more like blog posts. So
yeah, that is more like blog posts. You're right.
Yeah, and I just sort of call it, I don't know what they call it, but Quora to me seems like it's provoked blogging. It's like, I can't think of anything to blog about. Let me go to Quora. Oh, I could write a blog about, the 10 principles of Burning Man any day. That'll be amazing. And then that'll be on Quora. And it'll come up in the search end results, much like the Medium post.
Right.
So that's the niche it fills. It's not really that I have a very precise technical question.
It does seem like that's a leak in their game because if you want to get growth, a really easy way to do it is allow anonymous questions so that a CEO can have their marketing person ask 7 questions. Like, does anybody have a solution for an HR product?
Yeah.
That does X. And you're like, actually, our company, HR Solutions, does X plus 1 plus Y and Z.
That would be banned from Stack Overflow in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. So we did not look so much at the general Q&A space as much as Experts Exchange, which anybody who's a developer in the room will remember that there was this website that started out as Q&A for programmers and failed as a business and was bought by a new owner. And the new owner said, well, let's just charge to read the answers. What could possibly go wrong? And then I can make some money. And instantly turned themselves into the enemy number 1 of all programmers in the world.
Really?
Because essentially they took all this content which should be generated by the community spirit of let me help my fellow developers. And the deal is it's going to stay on the internet. Other people can find it. I'm actually helping 1,000 people with every answer. And now some person you've never heard of hiding behind a company with an address that you can't find is charging $25 a month to read the things that you wrote.
Right.
And then the next thing that happened is, of course, nobody could get in there. to even write answers, so they couldn't get answers anymore.
Yeah, so they basically killed it. They took the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah.
Which is great for you because it also created a collective enemy for you to rally around. Talk about that.
That was fun because we would just say, people would say, what you working on? And we'd say Stack Overflow, and they'd say, what's that? And we'd be like, it's Experts Exchange, but it doesn't suck. And they would say, okay, I'm on.
Yeah.
I will take a job at that company. I will answer the questions. And so we got enormous public love from the developer community right on day one. We got liquidity instantly. Every question got answers. We were, for the first few years, we easily had 90% answer rates, if not higher, and questions are answered within minutes, and that has mostly persisted over the years.
Educate me as to what was the sort of, I guess what we call here in Silicon Valley, the messy middle. Some people call it the drunken walk, because you did a bunch of partnerships, I remember, and you allowed people to buy the software, or people could make their own community of movie answers.
Right. So we couldn't figure out.
And then there was jobs, and then there was an internal Stack Overflow at Microsoft that I think did really well.
Super well.
You
mentioned it all. I don't want to.
Tell us a little bit about the history and what you learned each time to the pivots.
Okay, so let's see. The number one thing, when we started, we always thought, hey, here's how we're going to make money. We'll get a bunch of developer eyeballs, and then we'll show them jobs. We'll show them job listings, and we'll let them submit resumes.
Seems reasonable.
And essentially that's the opposite of the evil business model, because it's a proposal to pay money to you as a viewer, not to monetize.
Totally
you.
reasonable.
And in fact, that business worked fantastically to this day. It's a big part of our business.
8-figure business.
It's a $44 million last year. Yeah.
Incredible.
That's great. And the whole goal was that could pay for the servers, but lo and behold, it's actually kind of,
pays for everything.
Great. Yeah, and hiring developers is a huge problem, and you can hire them on Stack Overflow. So that was the dream. Now, my co-founder didn't have time to do that on day one, so he slapped some ads on there. And also, he had this theory, hey, let's put ads on there so that if we later have to add ads, nobody will say, why are you adding ads? So we put ads on, and they were all endemic developer ads, and that turned out to be a great business as well. Not as big, but I think today that's a $16 million business. So that's nice. And we do almost nothing. It's like a small team of salespeople that sell ads mostly for Azure, honestly, the ads that pop up on there. But they're appropriate to developers, and they're not spammy, and there's no videos that launch when you go to the web page, and it's not a complete web takeover. And in fact, if you log on, you see fewer ads. As you get reputation, you see even fewer. So,
that's an interesting device.
Yeah.
So if you
such a small number of people that doesn't impact their inventory at all.
So if you contribute, you get a benefit of less ads. Do you make that explicit, or is it just
everything is all sure. Okay, so that was that became the first business. Finally, we got time to glamp on the developer thing. And then, and in the early days, people did come to us and say, I want a private Stack Overflow inside my company. And we said, we don't have time for that. And they said, please just give me the source code. I will give you any number of dollars that you ask for.
$1 million, $2 million.
Yeah, well, not $1 million. They said, I think we found in the early days, we got 5 customers. 4 or 5 customers, I never remember. And they paid $100,000 a year for the source code with no support. Nothing, no, you may not approach us, you may not speak to us, you may use the source code for any purposes you deem suitable, but only in-house, and go ahead and have fun with it. And then we stopped working on that, and that was because the VCs said, you don't want to do software. SaaS is not going to be a thing. Recurring revenue, nobody wants that. What you want is a gigantic network of highly engaged users. So we went and focused on building that huge network of highly engaged users. And one of the ways we did it, we said, God, how many programmers could there be? Let's add new topics so people can ask questions about non-programming stuff.
Right.
And we started with things like WordPress and gadgets and IT stuff.
Right.
And eventually we said, let's just let the community decide what they want to talk about. Maybe they're interested in bicycles. And indeed, they were interested in bicycles, but not that much. Mostly they were interested in WordPress and IT and security because it was our community, it was our core community. And we built out the Stack Exchange network, which today is even larger than the main Stack Overflow network, with this idea that, we'll build maybe 150 communities, and there'll be one for Harley Davidson and one for whatever.
Yeah, reasonable.
And they'll all, we'll monetize them differently. Who knows how you monetize the music one? Maybe you sell them subscriptions to music services. Who knows?
Yeah.
But that will be in the future. What ended up happening is actually we built an amazing Q&A engine on specific topics that started with things that programmers were interested in talking about, and maybe led a couple of steps away, degrees of separation. But we never did what Quora did, which is anything with a question mark.
Yeah.
And that was actually very successful for us, I think, because if you don't have a critical mass of people that are interested in a particular thing, you can't get what we call in the industry liquidity, meaning your questions don't get answers if there's not enough people. If you're really, really interested in building shade structures in the desert, and you go onto Quora and ask a question about building shade structures in the desert, unless there's a group of people that are all interested in that and have done that, you won't get an answer.
Right.
Whereas on Stack Overflow, for example, we got mathematics, and lo and behold, the majority of research level mathematicians in the world are frequently on Math Overflow, asking research level math questions, which I don't understand, and they get answers.
Were the VCs right that you should have gone broad and done what Quora did? Which is more valuable, Quora or Stack Overflow?
Definitely Stack Overflow. And they were actually, I don't.
Who knows? Because they don't publish their revenue, or do they even have revenue over there?
They almost certainly have a higher market cap, but they don't have revenue. So who knows? Yeah, we'll see.
So yeah,
we'll find out. I don't consider them to be too much of a competitor. Anyway, so they were partially right and partially wrong. 8 years passed. 7 years. Yep. 7 or 8 years passed after we sent Microsoft, these were the companies, it was Microsoft, Bloomberg, Capital One, and Credit Suisse. And we gave them a copy of the source code and just sent them off into the night. 7 years later, I'm at a party, and somebody says to me, I work for Credit Suisse. We use Stack Overflow internally. And I was like, you use what? No, you don't.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, we use it. Every developer at Credit Suisse uses it every day. The whole company is built on it, and we are utterly reliant on that. And I'm like, are you serious? And I said, call Bloomberg, find out what's going on there. And we found that, lo and behold, at Bloomberg Capital One, it had lit up on day one, and the usage was just 100% solid.
Why would they want to have it internal? Privacy reasons?
Yeah, because they have more questions about their own crazy code situation than about stuff that you can discuss in public.
Got it. Makes total sense.
Yeah, and so it's sort of a knowledge capture thing for the development team.
It's like a wiki for them, and they could just...
Yeah, except it's better than a wiki because you don't have to write an article.
No.
You answer a question if somebody has a problem. But
did you raise the price, or is it still $100,000 a year to run your entire...
No, it turns out to be way too low.
Yeah,
and so anyway, after that conversation
2
years ago, I came back and said, you know what, we should probably look to selling this again. It surprised me that it works to a much greater extent than I would have guessed. There were those were, and so and everybody sort of agreed, and we did a little sort of market pilot and stuff like that, and we talked to people, and I think now Microsoft is paying. These are I can't say this on the podcast. Yeah. They're paying us a lot more now. Other gigantic companies who I can't name.
It should be $1 million plus product if you got a big corporate enterprise.
Yeah, the big
like
corporations
that,
are paying $1 million plus.
Yeah,
and there's 28 of them right now. And so that's a big business that's growing. It's basically tripled last year.
Yeah,
just on that. And we've also made a version of it that's like cheap, where you swipe a credit card and then you type it into the website, and now you have one for your team of 12, and you now have your own little Stack Overflow. It lives on the website. It's super secure. Your stuff is in a private database.
Are you going to add Slack functionality to it? Like have
it? It has it.
So, but are you going to add your own like chat rooms to it? That seems like a no-brainer.
I don't know if we're going to add the chat rooms. We do, believe it or not, we have chat rooms that are weird and we can't get rid of. But everybody has Slack, and so when you set it up, so if you ask a question on whatever the topic is, it will automatically pop up in the Slack room, so people immediately see that the question has been asked, and then they can click and answer it, and it goes back into Stack Overflow.
When you advertise on LinkedIn, you get to build a long-term relationship with the most important people in the world. All of these customers of yours are sitting there on LinkedIn waiting for you to connect with them. So you're going to get these very high-quality leads, you're going to get great website traffic, and higher brand awareness. The first step is talking to the right audience. And every day, 500 million professionals engage on LinkedIn. These are also known as your future customers. Think about that, 500 million people. And LinkedIn has marketing tools for you to target your customers with precision. I'm talking about the job title, the company name, and the industry. This lets you create a much better message that your customers care about. And LinkedIn's the only place you can do this. And of course, if you're targeting the ads properly, this is going to lead to more trust with your customers. 4 out of 5 customers on LinkedIn are decision makers at their company. You know this because you're a decision maker and you're on LinkedIn. So you're building relationships with the people that really matter. Here we are. Presh created this amazing lead form for us. The goal was to get more people interested in advertising on This Week in Startups. That's pretty meta, right? Well, we looked for specific things like people's email, company name, phone, job title, and industries. And if we know we want the CMO or the chief marketing officer or somebody with podcasting in their title, or experimental marketing, whatever it is, we can go find them. So when building a campaign, we're able to target those exact positions, and we know our ads are not wasted. Okay, just go to linkedin.com/thisweekinstartups. LinkedIn.com/thisweekinstartups equals $100. Terms and conditions apply, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. If you're not advertising on LinkedIn, you are missing out on the most powerful ad network for businesses. It's just extraordinary. And you know that because you're on LinkedIn every day. That product gets better and better every week. The product gets better, and LinkedIn marketing is amazing. LinkedIn.com/thisweekinstartups. Thanks again to the LinkedIn team. You've been so supportive of this podcast. I really do appreciate it. Let's get back to this amazing guest. In a parallel universe, what do you think the company would have become if you didn't have control of the board?
I think, so one of the things is in the current universe, the board was very founder friendly. And I think they recognize that they just want to support founders and that their reputation depends on that.
Yes.
And if you're lucky enough to have those kind of investors, then nothing would have been any different.
Right.
I don't ever remember a vote. I don't think we ever had a vote in the board where people had to raise their hands. And then there was one person who was against it.
That is one of the weird conceptions young founders have, is that they're going to go to the board and it's going to be a series of votes on like,
Brexit.
Should we hire this person or not? It's like, it's going to be like, what do they call that vote? Like a ballot.
Yeah.
Like the ballot initiatives here, because we have ballot initiatives in California. I don't know if you have those in New York.
Not so often.
But they're like cannabis.
Yeah.
Up, down, and then they put like confusing language.
Right,
gay marriage,
right.
up, down. They put like super confusing marriage,
Right,
and people
right.
are voting like against gay marriage, and
When
they
they
don't
think
realize
they're
they're
voting
voting
for it.
against it.
Yeah.
It's like really sinister stuff. When
That definitely does not happen on the board. So parallel universe, it wouldn't have been different. I think in if we'd started maybe a decade earlier, well, you can see what happened to all the 1998 era companies. They did not have qualified people on the board to make the right decisions. We don't have a lot of tech industry operators on our board. Certainly not the VCs who are not like operators who became VCs. They were always finance people. And that's, I think, a minus in their column, that they really never ran a company.
So I credit you with what I would think are two unicorns now. Trello you sold early, but was on the way. And Stack Overflow clearly on the way, if not already there. And what do you think the secret is? What did you learn in, let's call it your second act? Because I think we're similar ages, like we're Gen Xers. You had a whole career doing Fog Creek that I think was singles and doubles would be a way to describe it in terms of wins.
Fog Creek is almost like, in retrospect, was sort of the incubator / laboratory that popped out. Stack Overflow, Trello, and now Glitch, which actually Glitch is so successful that Fog Creek sold off all the old businesses, changed the name to Glitch.
What is Glitch?
And it's 100%. So Glitch is a programming environment that is much, 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 much easier to use than every other programming environment. But it still uses just regular JavaScript code.
Got it.
So you're not programming in some kind of weird language that's designed to be easier to use, because I don't even believe that's possible. You're using the same programming language as everybody else, but all of the administrative nonsense around programming is gone. So Git, you know what happens when you go to a boot camp today to learn programming? You spend the first day or two learning Git, and Git is ridiculous. I don't know, I barely understand it. And when things go wrong, I'm lost. And I'm a professional programmer, I like to claim. Git is way too complicated, and you can't do the first thing in programming without Git. You can with Glitch. So Git is this enormously complicated way that you can have version control, so you can go back if you make a mistake. And you can work with a team so that you and I can both contribute to source code at the same time. On Glitch, we got all that, but we do it Google Docs style, meaning you write code, pops up in front of my eyes as
Real
you type
time.
it. I type, so it's not perfect for all situations, but for small teams,
is this pair programming thing still a thing where two people, one person codes and one person looks over their shoulder, or is that some dorky weird thing that is gone?
It still kind of works. Nobody wants to do it because of the social.
It's awkward.
But if they do,
it's awkward. It's like,
but
let's
it does
go eat, and I'll watch you eat and
work a little
describe you eating a hamburger.
If you're willing to be in intense mind meld with somebody for a
which is really
lot
weird
of
and
time,
awkward. I think you should
There are
take
people
a big bite of the hamburger.
You know
Joel.
what? There's
You should dip the fries in the ketchup.
the team that writes Mrs.
It's just
Maisel.
weird when you think about it. Like,
Do you watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or Gilmore Girls, which is my favorite
Yeah.
back in the day? That's a husband-wife team that write that. And that's what they do all day.
Oh,
They pair
Maisel is
program
there?
The script.
is
It's,
them one person typing
it's
and one over the
David
shoulder?
and Amy
I
Palladino
love
or something.
Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
I mean, you can see how they sort of they were able to work out the dialogue because there's not everybody can pull that off. Somebody tell me if they got divorced. I don't remember. Does anybody follow? They got divorced, right?
Yeah,
but
that
they
was
still
successful.
write the show
Do that to you.
together.
Yeah. Couple.
Which is but I mean they're still writing the show together. It's,
Oh, okay.
It's nuts. Yeah.
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 Well, it's Hollywood.
It's great.
So you spent what,
That's
10
a rare
years on
thing.
Fog Creek, just being like a small little dev shop in New York,
Yeah.
and
Just
then
doing experiment after experiment, really.
it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing when you think about it. What have you learned in this second act? When you look at these three
Ooh,
lightning
yeah.
in a bottles, there's some common theme that you did something different in Act 2 than Act 1. What was it? Or what is it? Take a minute to think that through.
I kind of wish I knew. You know what? Wow, I'm gonna have to invoke Ed Williams again. The day before we launched Fog Creek, or sometime in the first month of Fog Creek, he wrote a blog post which you cannot find anymore, not even anywhere, and it was called "The End of Free."
Yeah,
you
I remember
that?
this. Yes, of course.
It was enormously influential because everybody thought, and when '95, when the internet came out, the whole model was like everything is free, and then
Content
magic.
wants to be free.
Yeah, yeah, and that was the amazing thing about the internet is it's free because and actually the reason it was free is because the original ARPANET had a no commercial use deal because it was government funded in some way.
Like Burning Man.
Yeah, there you go. And what?
Well, no, you can't do commerce at Burning Man. You can trade.
right.
But you
right.
can't sell hot
That's true.
chocolate. But I
Everything's
can
free.
give you a hot chocolate for.
That's right. Yeah, everything is free. And so that was the original. And lo and behold, the first commercial companies on the internet just started giving stuff away for free, and eventually the VCs came and funded it. And then there was this huge, massive crash of 2000 and whatever,
Yep.
and then the .com winter. And
AKA
Ed wrote this
Web
post saying,
2.0,
you know what,
yeah.
nothing's going to be free anymore.
Right.
And he's like, I would rather have a company with 400 customers that pay me enough money, $10 a month,
Yeah.
so that I can eat stuff, than 400,000 customers that don't pay me anything,
Right.
and I can't eat stuff. So that was very influential at the time, and we were like, yeah, we're always going to charge for all the things. So we had a failed product, which you can still use, and it still works, and it's still good, but it did not succeed in the market so much, and it was called Copilot, and it was a remote tech support product. So you go to copilot.com, you're talking to your mom on the phone, your mom is like, can you help me with my computer things, because you're a computer geek, right? Okay, go to copilot.com, I'll go to copilot.com, now I take over your computer, and I fix the things. That's what that product was. And we were very much of this end of free mentality. So we're like, and it's $5. That's a good price for helping somebody fix their computer. Tech support departments can pay for it, whatever. What we should have done is made it free, and then figured out how to pay for it later, which would have been to go to professional tech support departments and
Yes.
sell them the advanced version that lets them run a team of 100 tech support people or 1,000 tech support people, and sell it to them for $1 million, but get the marketing from the free product. So that was our mistake. And when we launched Trello, even before we launched it, we said, how are we going to charge for this? And I think in 2000, I would have made that mistake again. I would have been like, hey, it's software. It's like Microsoft Word, $20 or $20 a month or whatever. What we said is we want 100 million people to eventually use Trello, of whom the 1% that get the most value out of it pay us $100 a year. That was just the framework. And it was just orders of magnitude, right? And then it's a $100 million business, and it's worth $1 billion, and we're done. And so there were a bunch of things there. One was $100 million people, it can't be for developers. And so we looked at everything developer-y about Kanban boards and ripped it out. And we said, our example board has to be for a wedding planner, or a vacation or something not specific to developers. And any verbiage that even sounds like it's for development, we got to use. It can't be Fog Creek something. It has to be. It has to be its own domain name, its own identity. And so that was the 100 million, and that worked. And it also has to be viral in some way. So you invite people to boards, and you collaborate on boards, and we put a lot of work into that that part of it. And that was the 100 million. The 1% of the people who find it useful, that actually says. Also, the flip side of that is 99% of the people are just going to get it for free. But when you focus on the 1% that find that most useful, they will pay you, and they will pay for added features, and they will pay you anything you want because they're making money off of it. And I was reminded of when I used to work in the Microsoft Excel team, went to visit Bankers Trust, which became Deutsche Bank. Yeah. And they said, we like to laugh because we make more money off of Excel than Microsoft makes in a day, because Excel enabled the whole derivatives business. If you've ever heard of derivatives, that wasn't possible until Excel. And they sit there and make spreadsheets so that they can figure out models that allow them to make literally billions of dollars a day. And Excel was like lucky if it scraped up $1 billion a year. And so I love that about it, which is like they would those folks pay anything for Excel.
So I would recap it as there was the free movement, the end of free, and then the beginning of SaaS and freemium and free to paid. Yeah. And there is some sort of balance between the two.
Absolutely.
Having that top of funnel virality that then leads to some amount of people paying.
Yep.
What have you learned about leadership in yourself?
Wow. Working my way backwards, there's there's a lot of different ways to do leadership, and they work different at different stages in a company's life. I think there's a form of leadership which is coming up with simple slogans and rallying everybody and just shouting, like Steve Ballmer with developers. Everybody made fun of that because it looks so ridiculous. But what you're not noticing is that the audience is like, wow. They're really being led.
They're chanting with it.
They're really being led. And Microsoft really went hard after developers, and that's exactly what they should have been doing.
Yeah.
And that was the right. And then that whole thing kind of encapsulates the form of leadership that I think works on a large company, a large group of people with a leader that nobody knows personally. The smaller teams, which I'm good at, a lot of leadership is just figuring out how to delegate and make sure that people understand that they have permission. They have permission to make mistakes, but they're going to own them, but they own their world. And they really can't come to you for approval of every single little thing.
Yeah. Make a decision. Empower smart people.
Right. Hire people that are smarter than you, and then just get the hell out of the way.
Yeah, they may bring you stuff that they really can't figure out. And then in most cases, you just ask them, so what is your plan?
Right.
And then they tell you their plan, and you're like,
bingo.
Sounds like a reasonable plan.
Here's the thing. I rarely worked more than 8 hours a day in my entire career. Because if I figured if I'm working more than 8 hours a day, then I have failed to delegate something that I should be delegating.
Yeah, I agree.
And that to me was a sign that I was actually doing the work instead of, getting the right people on the bus, being the keeper of the vision.
Yeah.
And the third thing, I'm not running out of money, which I...
Yeah, that's an important one. Get the right people on the bus. Jim Collins, Good to Great, the book. And then, don't run out of money.
And don't run out of money.
Bang the drum, repeat yourself over and over again.
Yeah.
What are you looking for in the new CEO before we go to Q&A here?
We need a CEO that has seen the playbook, probably hasn't been a CEO yet. Like this is her next career. Yeah. Who has seen the playbook of we're at 70 million, but I'm calling it the 50 to 500 playbook. This is the heavy growth phase, probably some SaaS experience or almost certainly some developer experience at some point. Understands developers and is able to actually be that leader. To kind of figure out, what's it going to take to get the next 10x, and what's it going to take to make a company that can go public.
You should talk to that. I just had the CEO of SendGrid on. Oh, sorry to the CEO of Twilio for poaching, but I just had the CEO. I'm sorry, I forgot that we had the cameras on, but I just had him on, and he took over SendGrid and got it over the finish line, public and whatever. And he's exactly that. I forgot his name. It'll come to me in a second, but he kind of did that exact role. So somebody who's an EVP or a COO, or the VP of sales or chief revenue officer who wants that top slot.
Yep.
Sheryl Sandberg, whatever. It's too late. But Sheryl Sandberg, whatever, 10 years ago.
I'll take her.
Yeah, she's not available. She's going to be running for president or secretary of state.
Yeah.
I want you to stop doing things the old way at work, and I want you to become more efficient. And the way I want you to do that is to find new software solutions on the internet that solve your problems. And the way to do that is just go to Capterra. You just go to Capterra, and there are 700,000 reviews of products from real software users like you and me. They have 700 categories, and one of those categories that's super important is, of course, one of the things we were looking for at launch is a solution to manage our customer support. for all the different events we're using. And so we went to capterra.com/twist. We clicked on help desk software. We picked 4 stars and above for a company with 2 to 9 people. And we compared a bunch of different solutions that we saw on a list. We hit compare now. We looked at the pricing and $12 a user per month. Oh, wow. 4.5 stars out of 5. Done. There's so much great software out there that'll make you 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% more efficient at your company. This means the 10-person company you have doesn't have to add positions 11 and 12. You don't need to spend that money. You can just make your existing team more efficient. And that's what we recently did with Capterra for our customer support solution. So once again, capterra.com/twist, capterra.com/twist. I really love this product. I spent a lot of time on it. My team spends a lot of time on it. And I insist that you go right now to capterra.com/twist and become more efficient. Okay, thanks to the team over at Capterra too for making such a killer product. It's super helpful, not only for me, but my 200 portfolio companies. Speaking of which, let's get back to this amazing episode. Well, this is a real treat. Let's take a question or two from our audience. For those people who are watching at home, we have 60 founders in the room. You may notice they're all female. That's because this is the Female Founder University, which we run twice a year just for women. Okay, we have a question here. We're going to run a microphone, so please be patient while Nick runs.
One question on the pivoting. When you're pivoting, how do you explain to your investors or future investors that the past was actually useful for what you're doing now?
There's this verb that has been invented by startup founders, which is socializing, which essentially says you have to talk to your investors and your board one-on-one well in advance of the board meeting where you say the thing, and have those sort of soft conversations with them to kind of bring them around to your thought process so that when you actually hit that board meeting, they are actually where you are in terms of understanding the world and the pivot that was necessary. I've definitely seen companies that tried to pivot way too much or way too early, or it didn't make any sense, or it wasn't a legit pivot or anything, that were unable to successfully bring their investors along with them. But I think it's mostly about making sure that they understand where you're at. And for me, it's just a matter of meeting with them a couple of times between meetings.
Yeah. And also, it may not have been a valuable use of time. What happened before, you might be like, that was a mistake.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's actually more common.
That was a stupid idea that we have now stopped doing.
Yeah. I found it may be different with different kinds of boards. My board is usually aggressive. They're usually angry and aggressive when we're doing well, and very sympathetic when we're doing poorly. I don't know how to explain that, and that leaves me like the confused dog in the psychology experiences who just wants to.
It's like you get an A- and your mom's like,
yeah,
I guess there's room for improvement.
Yeah. But then you get a C, and she takes you out for ice cream.
Yeah, and she's like, listen, let's sit down and let's make a plan here.
Right. It's exactly like that.
B plus.
And it leaves me whimpering.
Almost an A.
Again, like the dog
You're
that
just
does
bouncing
absolutely
right
does
up
not
along,
know what people
almost
want from
to an
her.
A. Yeah. Okay, getting there. Okay, let's take another question.
Alyssa Shavinsky with Faster Than Light. What's up next for you?
Oh boy, I wish I didn't have to say that, but I'm not sure yet. I definitely know that that I do better in small things rather than large things, and I also, this is going to be disappointing to my fans, feel like the starting of companies playbook, I have played that out, and I have kind of collected all the cards. I got the VC, I got the bootstrap, I got all the cards, and I got the exit. We'll have an IPO. I feel like the other things that I might want to do in life are probably going to come from some other domain, but probably not duck farming. But it's more likely
definitely
to be
not
duck
retiring.
farming than a new startup, and definitely not retirement.
If you weren't a developer, you didn't do all this, what would be the one career that you think you had dreamed of? Musician, documentary filmmaker, author. What have you always wanted to do? Like, I wish I could be on stage with that guitar like Mark Knopfler and play Sultans of Swing.
Let's go with that.
That's
Rockstar.
mine.
Rockstar.
You can't take mine.
Oh.
I always wanted to be like Mark Knopfler and play Sultans of Swing and a guitar like that. What would you want to do? What's your Mark Knopfler?
It's hard. I really, in retrospect, I really love writing code, and actually returning to writing code, which I've been doing lately, is very, very enjoyable for me. And I'm pretty good at it. I'm just showing off here, but a lot of times I'll take somebody else's crappy code and be like, what is going on with developers these days? I haven't coded in 5 years, and I can make this 10 times better.
Last question.
you're obviously a fantastic serial entrepreneur and you've got the playbook. What are the things that you learned from startup to startup to startup that were skills that you focused on to get better each time?
Great question.
What are skills that I focus on to get better each time? Boy. I don't. There's so many. There's so many. There's
Tactical
so many.
stuff you learned that made a big impact.
Yeah. It's like really like every week I'm learning a new thing, and so it's sort of hard for me to kind of identify it. And then of course I keep forgetting them almost as quickly as I learn them. A lot of them are probably one of the biggest one is not to be afraid of salespeople. Their developers have a real tendency to think that sales is some kind of fake skill of forcing people to buy something that they don't want. And so they're kind of afraid. They're like, we're not going to do that. We're going to have a company without any salespeople. Atlassian,
that was their
talked
claim.
about that endlessly. We don't have salespeople.
Product sells itself, and then Slack comes along with an enterprise sales force, and it's like,
Yeah. You could see why developers might think this, and it's because they're very pragmatic, I guess, and they're very sciencey and sales to them
sometimes also introverted.
And sales seems like a profession for extroverts and golf players, and they don't understand it. And I think there's kind of a lot of fear of that. And I definitely learned not to fear the good salespeople. I think a lot of what I was learning also is that not everybody can do every job if you just believe in them. There's a lot of people that really can't. Kind of learning how to give people, very succinct, like, no, you can't do this job. You're going to have to leave. This is your last day. And
brutal, but necessary.
Yeah, and it's there was kind of a lot of people that I gave an awful lot of rope to, and the rope I hung myself with the rope that I gave them.
Yeah,
is that a metaphor? Did I?
No, I understand it. You
that?
Throw somebody in the deep end of the pool. Sometimes they drowned.
Yeah,
right, and it's like your responsibility to know that person.
They're just not gonna. Yeah,
they shouldn't be thrown in the deep end of the pool. It's not their skill set. They should be in the
right, and they're
shallow
just as
side.
unhappy as you are about their performance, and they're going to be happy somewhere else doing something that they're good at, which there always is, and just go help them with that.
It's also like a stage thing when you think about it. Like the first 20 employees do 4 jobs each, then you hit 200 employees, and you have 6 people doing each job function.
Yeah.
So they're dividing it by 6. And it's like, well, the person who has that ability to bounce between the sales team and operations, and design.
And office management.
And ordering lunch. That person's not going to beat the world-class designer from RISD who has a team of 3 designers working with him. Like, they're going to out-design them.
Yeah, I think that's true. And certainly for companies that are at some level of growth, I don't know what the right number is, but certainly every 5X, you probably need a completely different team. Maybe every 10X. You kind of have all the wrong people on the executive team, on the management teams. The individual contributors may continue to be individual contributors in a larger org, or they may not even because they like small orgs and not large orgs.
And you yourself are an example of this. You have the self-awareness.
Yeah.
So it's almost like sometimes you work with young people, they just don't have the self-awareness to know that the company outgrowing them is as much about them having 3 doors open that are a better journey for them than staying here. You know that. Yeah. 70 to 700 million is going to be no different. It's going to be boring. Yeah. It's going to be watching paint dry for you.
Yeah.
But for somebody else, they're going to get a real kick at getting to doubling revenue every year.
Absolutely.
For 3 more years.
Yeah.
Let's give it up for Joel Spolsky one time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, David.